Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Revit Radio. I am Brian. That is Melissa, and that is Melissa's AI alter ego. That's her AE, her alter ego, not her AI. Glad for everyone to join us here. I do see a few new names inside of here. So it's nice to always see some new names come in. So for those of you who are new, this session is all about you asking questions and we answer them. If you don't ask questions, then maybe you'll get to hear about my trip to beautiful Banff, Canada. Um, other than that, if you all want to chat, just always feel free to give us some chats. And the questions, do put them in the Q&A pod. It's much easier for Melissa and I to take care of, see them in its own little separate Q&A pod. So that's going. And as usual, I always like to start off by talking about something. So if you haven't put questions in, this is my way of giving you time to put those questions in. So a couple things. I always like to go online and always start this off, Revit Radio off with what has happened. So last Revit Radio we did on July 1st. So on July 1st, we have got all these new data exchange connectors for Revit. So if you guys are using Autodesk Construction Cloud, and you are trying to just extract data out of your Revit files, that's what that is there for. It actually works pretty cool. You can just extract data out, and then that data exchange file can be used with other programs like Inventor or Rhino or even some of the other thoughts, etc. Inside of there. Also wanted to point out that there was an update for Revit 23 as well as Revit 26. You should be on Revit 26.2 for those of you who haven't been paying attention. So that's it. One of the other things they did come out with in Revit 26.2, so right there is a what's new in our Revit here. So what's new in Revit 26? If we come down here to this, you'll see that there was no. I wanted actually what's new 26. Where's the what's new? Oh, sorry, wrong click. If we come over here, you'll start to see what's new in Revit 26.2. They did change a few things. One of the things they did say is we've had the tech preview for accelerated views. It's now abiding by crop region. So I don't know if you guys are in 26 playing. If you turn the accelerated views on, the crop region disappears. They've fixed that inside of there. I'm not sure what this one was. I didn't actually see this one. So yeah, there's a few other things in there. One of the things they did put in here as well, which I actually don't see listed inside of here, but I guess it's good I'm going to talk about it, is they did come out with a new residential pack for Revit. So if you are in there, and I know most of you on this call probably are not using out-of-the-box content, but they did add some out-of-the-box content. And I actually didn't even know that they had this in there. I was talking to Paul Obman, he was showing me this. They had a system families folder in there, and I did not realize that they actually had the old system families library, which talked about just some like wall types you could go in and download. So I had no idea that out of the box Autodesk actually had container files. Did you know this, Melissa?
I never went and looked.
Neither did I. I'm like, oh, because there's the like the stair and railing system one. That's funny because they had this way back when version like Revit 7 or 8 or 9. They got rid of it. I'm not talking 2009. I'm talking like Revit 9. And they got rid of it for a few years. And I was talking to Alvin. He's like, oh no, they've we went through and cleaned a lot of that up because there was in the old version, there was one that was so old it didn't even have balusters in there. Because in the old versions, you just said, hey, use this support and repeat it. And there was a repetition on there. And he's like, yeah, that one was still in their sample file. So it was kind of funny. So they do have a couple of these in there. Just pointing out that it's there for those of you who wanted to see it. And in 26, I didn't know those even existed, period. But in 26.2, they then did give us the residential content library pack where they've updated and added a lot of things to the residential stuff. So for those of you out there going, hey, we might need something, like I know there was like car charger inside of here for your house, a couple gazebos or picnic tables with umbrellas, etc. So they did add some of this content in there.
Yeah,
So
smoker.
what was that, Melissa?
Smokers.
Smokers. Yeah, they got smokers. I have no idea what was decided, why. Some small exercise equipment, which I thought was pretty good. A couple new chimney families. Those ones are a little bit more complex. So it's also been one of those things, knowing that it's here, being able to come in and explain to users, hey, this is in there in the out of the box content. you can reverse engineer it. And I love the fact that somebody's showing how to use curtain walls with a little shower door. So there's a little shower door family, right? So somebody created a curtain panel. It's not a door, so it's not going to schedule as a door, but they did a curtain panel. That's a shower door family. So just, I didn't know this existed. Aubin showed this to me. I thought this one was hilarious. Even hangers inside of here. I mean, they're simplified rectangular hangers, but there are actually hangers in there. And then they do truly show up with just lines. Oops, that's not the right one. They do truly show up with lines in just a plan view. So I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah. So there you go. That is what I was starting with. No, these are not available in Revit 25. Well, let me rephrase this. Some of it was there in 26 or in 25. The new stuff came out in 26.2. But if you go to open and then you just go to your Imperial Library, it is under the system families, which I did not know this folder even existed. This system families folder, you should see the overall system family, stairs and rails, and then the all systems. If you're in 26, it would be located under the residential content pack. If you
And for
just
those of
download
us
the
that
26,
don't download, yeah.
yeah, if you just install 26.2, this does not come with it. You do have to go download the 26.2 residential pack. So when you are online, I probably have way too many open now. When you are online, if you go into libraries, so if you go to manage.autodesk.com, you go to products and services, there then is going to be the libraries. And this is where you can download that Revit content pack for that.
Yes. Yeah, my question was Jason's too. Is it in the load Autodesk content so you don't have to go through that?
I don't know. So if you go into the insert, let's check. Like I said, I talked to Paul Aubin.
Go on an adventure.
The reason I keep mentioning Paul Aubin is he was the one who created a lot of this stuff or cleaned it up for Autodesk. So we go load Autodesk family and let's go to fire and see if the fireplace is there. So I have to enter. Does anything in here look like a fireplace? There we go. So yeah, the fireplace is in there now.
There's the fire pits.
There's your fireplace. There's the fire pit. So it's looking like, well, I knew the fireplace was new because I talked to Aubin about it. So yeah, it looks like it is going to be in the load Autodesk content as well. If you didn't want to go through the load Autodesk content, like I said, and where I was going with it is you can download it under libraries. You can go and say, cool, this is where the whole library is, and you're going to get just the residential. And then you'll get the other ones are down there too if you wanted to go to older stuff too. So wanted to point that out. There is a need to fix all of the ugly thumbnails in the load Autodesk content. Yeah, agreed. But so that's where I was going to start off while we're waiting for questions. The only questions were follow-ups to that. And then Michael's question, which is hilarious. This was the exact same first question on Civil Chat that we did earlier. So Michael's question was, so by show of hands, how many people are planning to go to Autodesk University? Got to raise my hand. I'm going. All right, so there's a few people here, a few hands put up, not a whole lot. So one of the things that they were talking about on Autodesk University that's different this year is in previous years with Autodesk University, you could go register for a class and you'd get a seat in there. This year, it's on a first come, first served basis. But the reason I'm bringing this up, and that's what Michael's talking about, is what do you think about that? But the reason why I'm bringing this up, for those of you who are going, and even if you're not, go to the class sessions and favorite the classes that you think need a big classroom. Because how they're doing this is there's a bookmark you can put in there. And if you don't bookmark a class, that's how they're determining classroom sizes this year. So in years past, how many people registered is how big of a classroom that speaker got. So even if you're not going to go through the class list and start bookmarking things, because even afterwards, you'll be able to go view and download the online sessions of those if you wanted to. So it's kind of nice, but then that way you'll have it already bookmarked for something for you to go look at later. Plus, it might boost that speaker's room size. I know I'll be there. I'll be presenting. I actually was presenting Revit Family Editor Basics, and they repeated it because too many people registered for that. So labs you can register for, and I believe roundtables, but everything else is first come, first serve. So I think everybody's like, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't think what's going to go on there. I personally think Autodesk did this in as a person who's presented in the past, the people who register, it's always about 25% people do not show up. And then 2 minutes before it starts, they start letting all the people who are waiting in line in. And that always takes about 10 minutes. So it's like interrupting yourself as a presenter. So the fact that they're just going to let people in until it's full and then they say you're not, I think actually for the presenters will be a little bit nicer. But that's what I got to say. And I noticed that Tom's like,
That's
yeah,
fair.
there weren't that many classes he was interested in. I've been on that same boat for the last few years, Tom. It's kind of like, yeah, there's ones here. I've been branching out. Like, I know a couple years ago, I went to an inventor class that talked about inventor to Revit. There's no 100% nothing about Revit. Is how do you prepare your inventor files for Revit? How do you export them? How to use their shrink wrap tool or whatever. So for me, I go to classes that are completely not at all what I want, but something I would like to have a teeny bit more knowledge on so I can somewhat speak like a person who knows what they're talking about. Yeah, and Jessica's calling it, it's a sales pitch. I can't disagree with that one. I feel like over the last few years, I mean, I laughed last year. They were talking about how they had made sure that there were more independent speakers than AU speakers. And then I'm sitting there laughing because every class I went to that wasn't an AU speaker, there was an AU, sorry, an Autodesk employee. There was an Autodesk
Okay.
employee who
It's
was a
like they all
co-speaker.
were.
Well, they were co-speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was like a third of the classes were sponsored, and that's what cracked me up too, because it was like then they were co-speakers, and I sat up there in one class, and it was like the three Autodesk people spoke for 45 of the hour, 50 minutes you're supposed to for 10 minutes for questions at the end, and the last 5 minutes the guy who was the main speaker spoke, and it was like, wow, this was
That
total
seems like a
marketing.
good gig.
Yeah, good gig, good gig. He got to go for free to let Autodesk talk.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're just still in that same boat where they've kept the prices so high for the expo that it's not worth it for the small people again.
Yeah.
So sadly, I don't believe we will be there unless there's some sort of miracle and also Aaron gets cloned. I think those two things both need to happen.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, as a presenter, I always get to go there for free as a presenter. I'm actually have to pay for a room this year because or no, I think my wife's company's picking up the room. So for me, it's usually just airfare to get out there. So for me, it's worth the airfare. Last few years, I've literally just sat in the exhibit hall at the ID8 booth. They've been fortunate enough and nice enough to let me steal their network wired connection as an exhibitor, and I've literally just been working and saying hi to people. So for me, it's just working from here. I don't call it working from home. I call it working from here. I worked from Canada last week. Just kind of one of those things. And it's just like, I like to go and see people, talk to people. And for me, as a
Yeah.
sole proprietor of a business, it's kind of my marketing to go and talk to people. So yeah, so I do kind of agree. It's going to be weird, just the first come, first serve, which means I'll probably be 100% in the exhibit hall, except for my two classes that I'm teaching and the two lab assistants I'm being. So but if you are going, make sure to look me up. More than likely, I'll be hanging out at the IDA booth, so or the Gray Tech booth, the ID8 portion of the Gray Tech booth. So if you are going, come look me up. All righty. So what I see two questions. The rest of you are all slacking. What's the first question we're going to look at?
Let's go with Rick's first question. So, can you help explain why using hide in view is hard on a model? Model in place items, especially if they are copied, are hard on a model. Also, what other things that newbies do are hard on a model? I'm trying to put together an updated best practices list document of things not to do. I know I'll get pushback because many of my users just think I like to make their lives harder. Rick, and you know that they like to make your life harder. So
Oh no, they're all just like, no, no, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Just whatever. I always laugh because the first thing I say is hardest on a model is warnings. And I have several examples of this, but I always like to see I had one client who they were interviewing me to come in. They decided they wanted to hire me for a 6 month contract. I came in, I walked through the office, and they didn't even introduce me to this person. And she just came up and said, my Revit's broken. You need to fix it. I opened up the model she was looking at. The model she was looking at had 60, 80,000 warnings. I don't remember, but it was a ridiculous amount. The reason for that is the previous BIM manager they had there was using the wall instance-based properties of like mark or comments to fill out fields that they would use that would be similar on every wall. So of those 80 or 60,000 warnings, probably like 70,000 of them were elements of duplicate mark values. And it was literally 100% the mark, the comments, and the type mark values that they were using. I simply went in and added some shared parameters, transferred those over, did it what I needed to do, removed all of the ones out of the mark or the type mark values, and the file, everybody said, holy crap, our synchronizations just went from 30 minutes to 5 or whatever the numbers were, right?
I
That
wasn't
person
even
could open
opening
the
the
model.
warning.
And everybody always tells me, oh, that's just a little warning. It doesn't matter. That's just a little warning. It doesn't matter. It's like they all matter. That client has since been one of the best clients I've ever had. They have instituted a policy at that company called Warning Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, each team member has
Nice.
to spend an hour fixing warnings. Honest truth, each team member spends about 15 minutes because by the time they do this every week. Their warnings on giant projects are usually less than 200 warnings. And I'm talking giant projects because they spend the
Mhm.
time to do this. So to me, warnings are the biggest thing inside of there. Warnings that have to deal with calculations are the biggest warnings. So like overlapping walls, overlapping area boundaries, or some room boundaries, two walls, things like that, because Revit's constantly trying to calculate square footage and or volumes, and it does it based off of those things. So if you can get rid of those warnings first, those are always the biggest warnings to do it. But again, every single warning matters. Right. So that's the biggest thing, Rick. That's what's going through, and that's what happens. And what I say to all of this stuff, and part of the reason why all of this stuff slows Revit down, is every time you go to a view, every time you select something, Revit parses through its database to see what that something is doing. Right. So if I open up a view, Revit opens up this view and it's parsing through its database. Hey, what's going on in this view? By what's going on in this view, I mean what warnings are in there I have to take into consideration, what elements have been hidden in this view, blah, 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 blah. So every time you do something, Revit's doing that. So if I open up a view, it's going in, cool, this view, is it listed in hide elements in view, right? So if I came in here and said, cool, hide in view this element, that's now going to the database. Everything's got to start going through to calculate what is going on, how many things are there. The longer that list becomes, the longer it takes to do everything. Right? When you synchronize, Revit tells you warnings that might be happening. When you reload latest, Revit tells you warnings. How does it know that? It's parsing through all of the data in the database, right? So this is my simplest way of saying something like that. The more stuff in the database, the more it has to parse through, right? So when you do a right-click hide elements in view, Revit's going to go through that. And if you hid this element in this view, then went to the next level or the next floor plan, the finished plan, hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, you've now got hide elements in view 15 times. A better solution is to create a filter, apply a filter to a template. Now Revit understands that's part of the template. That's one line of data, not 13 lines of data, right? Another example I have on something like that is somebody went in and created a detail item that was a circle and they called it drain pipe. Then they took that detail item, they copied it around to the 15 places it was on the building and did a grouping of those 15 places and called it drain pipes, right? So that one detail component called drain pipe was nested into a grouping, another group called, so not detail component, sorry, detail line was nested into a group called downspouts or whatever. And then that was placed in every damn floor plan view. That one group of the single circular line of downspout was in the project 595 times, right? Copy it 15, take that 15, put it on every floor plan, every reflected ceiling plan, everywhere you need to see what's going on with that. I eliminated that. I actually just drew a pipe, or it might even have been a round structural column. I don't remember. Got rid of the 495 times, and I compared the synchronizations, and the synchronizations literally started saying, holy crap, I went from 20 minutes, like I synchronized, made one little change, synchronize again, cool. Whatever it was taking forever. Got rid of that group, modeled something in, and now the synchronizations went down to like 10 minutes. Right? So those types of things you will physically notice on a project when you get into it. The same thing is true about warnings. I had one client, their project had a few thousand warnings, not big, like 3,000, 4,000 warnings. And they were complaining about speed, and the project got put on hold. They had time to solidify it. And one of the guys like, hey, cool, I'm going to go in and do this. And he started noting that, cool, I got down to 1,500 warnings. My synchronization time increased by like 3 minutes. I got down to 1,000 warnings. I noticed another increase, and he kept noticing these increases when he got around these numbers. So it was like 300 warnings, 600 warnings, 1,000 warnings, 1,500 warnings. Those were like the benchmarks. Not me. This user was doing to notice what it was. And it was hilarious when that project came back onto speed like a month later. Everyone's like, oh my God, this project's so much faster. Because he went through and cleaned up warnings. He went through and got rid of the stupid, downspout group type things. And the project just was much, much faster. So those are the things that you need to really start looking at and start going into and understanding, hey, this is what's there. I will use a perfect example that happened to me within the last month that a building owner gave us a scan to BIM model. We've got our building. We've had somebody laser scan it. We put it into BIM. You've got this complete Revit file. You could use it. It took me an hour and 15 minutes to open up this file, and I could not navigate into it. When I got into the thing, there were 4,000 in-place families, and no, 14,000 in-place families and over 14,000 warnings. I literally just went in and said, cool, let's look at all the in-place families. A lot of them were stupid things like signage or whatever. So I just purged them all out of there, right? We need walls, floors, roofs, and potentially structure in this model. That's all that was in there. There was no ductwork. There was no MEP. It was architecture and structure. So I deleted all of the in-place families that just happened to not be a wall or a ceiling or a structure. So there were still some in there. And I also removed all the groups that were in there. I literally just selected every group and ungrouped it. I went and was able to open up that file within 15 minutes, still not acceptable, but within 15 minutes, and I could actually navigate the file. And all I did was remove groups and in-place families, right? And I literally just deleted the in-place families that I didn't need. There were still quite a few in there, but just those two things sped that model up to where people are like, oh, now we can actually navigate and make this file usable.
Right.
So just find one of those projects, Rick, that you think are going to go, that feel like they're being slow, clean up some of those things or have the team clean them up and just have them notice it. And I guarantee if you have them, they'll physically notice it. They're like, oh my God, this is faster. Selecting something's faster, synchronizing is faster, opening is faster. They will notice it and then they'll be true believers.
Well, half the time, even just opening the warning list, I had a project where it was like 20 minutes just to open that list,
Yes.
let alone do anything. It's like, this might be a sign, guys.
And I'm going to give Ideate a shameless plug here because this is one of the tools. Under the Ideate Explorer, one of the options they have inside of here, there's probably not going to be any warnings in here, is this warnings tab. And this warnings tab is exactly what you want it to be. It's still, I can do this. I'm like, oh, look, there's this has duplicate type mark value. So a generic 12-inch wall has the same type mark value as this, right? And if I double click it, it'll take me to one where it happens to be there, depending on what the object is. Or now I can just be like, cool, let me go in here and grab this and be like, okay, cool, that's the one I needed inside of here. Excuse me. So that's the wall type. I can go edit the type mark on that, right? So I can keep this dialog box open of the warnings. This truly is how everybody wants the warnings to be.
Right.
If you have no, if you buy no other add, if you're a company that has severe issues with warnings, buy this damn tool. Because the reason nobody cleans up the warnings is it's a pain in the ass to clean these warnings up through the Autodesk or the Revit warnings dialog box. It's stupid. Oh, let me copy the screen capture the element ID number. Let me come back to select my element ID number. It's the stupidest thing ever. So coming in here, just looking at these warnings, this is kind of the biggest thing. So I don't know how much just the Ideate Explorer tool is. You can get it for that. It's great. The other thing that also helps you inside of this too is if you literally just came inside of here to talk about what Rick's saying with like modeled in place or whatever, you can come down here and just say, cool, I want to come up here and see the entire project. And here's everything you've modeled in that project. But they've even got pre-built filters like, cool, I want to know what's been modeled in place. Cool. This has nothing modeled in place. This is what I literally did in that project that had 14,000 modeled in place elements. I was like, oh my God. And FYI, half of those were railings. Every railing was every component of railing was modeled in place if it wasn't the entire railing. I think there were like 3,000. I tweeted or I blue skied this. Mallory was like, oh my God, that's horrible. And there was like 9,000 in place ceilings or something. It was so bad. So yeah, if nothing else, the Ideate Explorer tool, it gives you this model category in place. You can set up your own stuff too. So like you talked about, I don't think it'll show you hidden view. You might be able to show something that says hidden view, but you could set this up like, oh, cool. What elements are hosted? What elements are not hosted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What elements are we monitoring? So you can, the walls that are When you do copy monitor, you can copy monitor walls, grids, levels. You can say, I only want to see things we're copy monitoring, etc. So you can use the out of the box or build what you want with this as well. The other reason that I like this too is you can come in here, and this isn't a work shared project, but if it was, you could sort it by what phase things are in. Or if it was a work shared project, you could sort it by what work set. So you can make sure people are putting things on the right damn work sets. So, like I said, the warnings tool here, this is what I love about it. This is what half the reason. I mean, there are two things that I originally saw IDA tools. The X-ray tool, hey, why can't I see something in a view? It tells you. And in the warnings tool and Explorer. Those two things alone were with buying IDA, in my opinion. 90% of my questions of why can't I see this in my view went away when my
You
clients
did
started
it
using
good.
X-ray.
Yeah, those are nice. Oh, yeah, and Simon had a comment. I wish Autodesk would give users ways to control the warnings to look for. We don't need warnings for property lines. It's never straight. They force it to give an error if it's not straight. I totally agree. Like, just let
Yeah.
us say, okay, I know, thank you. Click.
Yeah, right there with you, Simon. Or like when you start manipulating a floor or even a topo solid now. Oh, element is going to be not displayed properly for its thickness. Yeah, I don't care.
No, Michael, we're not saying because they're gonna have to ignore it anyway. But if you could like check it as like move it to a different list.
And
Like I
theoretically,
understand you
I haven't set it
I
up, but with the ID8 warnings, they do actually have a priority list that they come with out of the box. I
yeah.
completely disagree. Like green, this is not a big deal. It's okay to, first off, nothing should be green. Blah blah blah. Nothing should ever be
Mhm.
green. I hate that. It should be like it's either severe, bad, or not good.
It should be at least yellow.
Yes, there should never be something green because green means you can ignore it. Um, the other thing that's funny about warnings too is a lot of people don't know. So you might get, and Michael brought up the unjoining warning needs to go away, etc. There are some warnings that if you actually get a warning, and I'm just gonna literally copy this wall so it's on top of each other, nudge it down so I get a warning, right? There are specific warnings that when you come into the warning dialog box, it might give you the option to fix it. One of those war as element is attached to but misses the target. If you in that warning and you see that, you can just literally select all those elements and say detach. And this is where the ideate tool is great because I can grab all the elements of a warning and then I can go in there and say, cool, open up the warnings, the Autodesk Revit warnings dialog and say detach. And so literally I was on a project with like 175 elements are attached to, but missed the target. Cool, select detach, done. Right? Structural columns, walls, whatever it might be. Hey, they moved, something changed. I want to go through and detach those objects. I can go through and do that.
With those, I'll tend to pick like all the walls in a 3D view and then hit the warnings up in the ribbon.
Yep.
Then usually you get your unjoin button there.
Yeah, or like it's different in versions 24, 5, and 6, but it'll be like room is outside of the thing. If you grabbed all room tags, you could just say move to room. Fixed. I used to go to clients, man, I just fixed 175 of your warnings. Like, wow, you're really good at that. It's like, no, I'm just literally saying move tags back to the rooms because you've redesigned the damn space and the tags in all the different views are all over the place.
Well, not one specifically, 'cause doesn't that have a pop-up that you can actually hit move to room
You could, and now in
as you've done
25 and
it?
24, 5, and 6, they change that where it automatically enables a leader now. So now your room tags just float way the hell out there. I was personally not a big fan of that feature.
Yeah, I don't love that bit, but I feel like there are a few where it does actually allow you to deal with it at the time as long as you pay attention. But I think like Michael's saying, most people just see the little pop-up and like hit go away and don't even read it. So it just ends up on the warning list.
Yeah. So, but those are those things, Rick. And if you Google it, people are going to have inside of there and what's going on. I mean, that's a lot of those the overlapping walls. Sometimes we're not going to be able to deal with that. Half of that is because usually people are modeling finished walls. When somebody moves the architectural wall and the finished wall is now inside of it or embedded into it, or they drew that finished wall, they're at wall center line, so it's half in and half out. A lot of those things are pretty easy to isolate and go through and do. But yeah, like I said, if it's really really bad, look at the ideate Explorer tool. Like I said, I don't know how much that one tool is, but the other thing about ideates all of their tools is if you check out a license, if somebody uses it and gives it back, it's on an as-needed basis. So it's not like you're signing licenses to individual users. They have that option, but the better option is just buy it for the company. If somebody's in it for 5 minutes and they get out, then it's available for anybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think those are the big
This
ones. I know. What are other big slow the Revit down scenarios that you can think of, Melissa?
it definitely is the room and area stuff are big ones, and things that are joined to all over the place.
Yeah, and constraints. Constraints can also slow you
Yep,
down quite a bit.
constraints are a big one. I was going to ask though, with the company that does the Warning Wednesdays, do you think that a lot of the people now that they've actually taken some ownership of the warnings, they understand it a little better during modeling as well?
Yes.
So in some ways, they're creating less warnings because they know what not to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the big things I didn't say is make sure whoever created the warnings are the ones repairing them. I had
Mhm.
one firm, I know Desiree did this as well. One firm going to have a guy just, okay, you're going to go clean up warnings in this project. And he cleaned up warnings and he was all proud. I was like, look, we started off with 1,500 warnings. I just cleaned up 300 warnings. And when he hit synchronize, he was only down 50. So literally they created 250 warnings in the time he cleaned up 300. Right.
That
So if
tracks.
the people don't understand the consequences and or how hard it is potentially to clean up those warnings, they just don't give a shit. So make sure you can do that. Hey, you were working in this area. This is probably a warning from you, but make sure everybody did it. And that's like I said, that one company who does warning Wednesdays. And if it's a crunch week, right? We got a deadline on Friday. They don't do it that week. But throughout the normal times, they do warning Wednesdays. And the company policy is everybody spends an hour fixing warnings. And in reality, it's 10 to 15 minutes on each person. Because if you only have less than 200 warnings per project, you're kind of like, yeah, cool. We've got the floor thickness BS1. We've got the property line BS1. Cool. Yeah, and Simon said you can get warnings within families. Um,
Mm.
so that one particular client, they have a round building. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the Marine Museum. It's out of like DC. It's a completely round building. They did that building in Revit, had zero warnings. Not
Boom.
slightly off axis, not a single one of those for a round building, and every freaking wall came out of the center of the building. They actually got it down to 4 warnings. And the 4 warnings, I would have wanted to just let them have a 0 warning building. So I spent my own personal time doing it and realized it was one of my families that had the warning in it. And that family was placed 4 times, and that's where those warnings came from. So, yes, Simon, warnings can exist within families. So if you do get those, try to figure out what those are in the family first, because again, if you've got a warning in a family and you load that family 500 times, that's there. And then the other big thing I would say is rogue CAD information. Oh, Jessica said that too. Um, and it's not only rogue CAD information within the project, it's rogue CAD information within the families as well, right? We all know that CAD stuff coming in is horrible and etc. Um, again, I don't. You guys ask me questions. These are the tools I use all the time to do it. One of the things that Autodesk actually has is called, or sorry, ID8 has this tool called object styles, and one of the ones they have is imported styles. So if you have any imported styles, it'll come through here and show them to you, even if those styles were from a family, right? So if somebody brought into a generic model family some CAD file and exploded it, left it in there, or even if they just imported it and deleted it, the styles will still reside behind the scenes and you can't get rid of them out of the box Revit. You would see all of those inside of here. So when I come in here and start looking at this, like, oh my God, there's going to be all the stuff inside of there. Yeah, Jessica's like, yeah, you can spend days in the style manager of ID8. This is probably the most used add-in tool I use. Next to the color-coded tabs, this is the most added user tool I use. Because yeah, it's going through cleaning all of this CAD information crap up is the other big one. That's an interesting thought, Simon said. He's got a curtain wall type that he uses for room separation lines, and then they can span multiple floors and they can be room bounding or not. That's interesting. Just a curtain wall with empty panel. Huh. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not sure how I feel about that one, Simon, but I'm definitely going to try it out a few times. Doesn't sound horrible. I just don't.
Yeah.
I just imagine somebody doing a crossing window, grabbing the curtain wall and deleting it and screwing a lot of stuff up.
Then you just hide it by element in every
You should
single
hide
view.
my element in view.
Totally, totally fix that.
The thing I would say, Rick, on a lot of this as well, is I think every user, and I laugh because I've been, I started training at an Autodesk reseller, many moons ago, and I have always taught filters. I don't think
Mm.
enough people understand filters in Revit to know what's going on. I think the reason people do hide in view is because they don't understand what a filter will do and how a filter can work. So that's kind of the ones to me that I think is a training thing that you need to. So you like hide and view, and you're going right click hide and view. Like I see the most time hide and view used on elevation markers. Oh, I don't want to see this elevation marker in here. It's a working section or whatever. So right click hide and view, right click hide and view, and they go start hiding these elevation markers and sections and whatever. When you're like, you could have just used a filter, and that filter could be used to just turn the visibility off of things. Or in this particular case, hey, I'm using this filter to do something else to it. Maybe I want to see those are there, but I want to half tone them and turn them red or something. Yeah, we turn Guardian on, guiding people to not hide in view, L views. Yeah, most of my clients are like, "Why is this broken?"
Why is
I
it
think
yelling
that's
at
the
me?
other thing
Yeah.
is part of the problem is you can't just tell people they can't do something. You've got to show them the alternates, right? What are the alternatives of that? Don't hide in right click hide and view this because guess what? You're going to hide this working view in every floor plan. You're going to hide this working view everywhere else. Here's what a filter can do for you. Oh, you're going to go draw this group for this downspout in 500 views. Let's look about modeling that instead, right? So try to think about here's the alternative to it, right? People don't read, people aren't interested in this, but if you can train them on the alternatives and the power of them, look, you wanted to hide this in view, but what if you want to still see it and you just want to change the color of it in your working views, right? You might want to hide X in these views, but I want to know what those are. And then once people start understanding filters, and I know Melissa and her team train everybody on filters, you'll start seeing that they just
Mhm.
love them and use the crap out of them. It's like, oh my God, this is what we really wanted to start doing in Revit a long time ago.
Yeah, like you want to set up a rule and have it followed. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what a filter will do. I find that a lot of people, I still talk to people that are scared of filters. I was having a conversation and that they were like, "Oh, this template's a mess. There's like 30 filters in every view." And I was like, "No, that's good. That's not a bad thing. You just need to understand." But yeah, Beth can attest. We have a literal shit ton of filters in
Yeah,
our
I think
template,
Parallax
but
uses more
they're
filters
consistent.
than anybody I've ever seen. But
Yeah, there's a lot of, but as they're consistent and they're basically the same across every view. So as long as you know this filter is catching all of the casework ADA clearances and it's everywhere, you can set them up where you need them to show how you want, and you don't ever have to think about it again.
well, and since Revit 22 or 3 or whatever it was, I sit there and laugh. I get a lot of clients who disagree, and I have to get rid of it. But almost every single one of my view templates, oh, this is the wrong client. I didn't open up the right client's one. But in almost every view, there's like 60 templates, view template. They're just not enabled. Because if in your view and you wanted to see the walls color coded that are
Mhm.
code rated, put the filters in there and just don't tick them on.
Yeah, that was my favorite, was once we had the ability to not apply the filter. That
Right.
did
I mean,
change
that
ours.
was
We do have a lot more.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I literally went, when that happened, I literally went and bought the add-in, the View Filter Manager tool that I know you guys use because Mallory's the one who suggested it to me.
Mhm.
I literally went and bought that tool and added every single filter to almost every single one of my View templates. Because again, I can go in there and I can have those View filters in there. They just not activated. And some people start to freak out going, yeah, I don't like having 75 filters in every single view. But it's kind of like, but now you have the capability to go through and do that if you want to, right? So if I come in here and look at like my overall plans and I go to filters, dang it, did I open up the wrong one again? I did. because I'm working on this in 24, and that's why I haven't updated it in 25 yet. Damn it. So I don't
Uh,
even have the working
uh,
one in here. But yeah. Um, yeah. So I opened up the wrong one. But yeah, so have them in there, just don't have them enabled.
yeah, that's the best thing because we tend to like to have a filter that shows warnings if people try to overrate doors and walls and things. So in our base template, we like to have it show up red no matter what view you're in so that people realize there's an issue. But a lot of our clients don't, but instead of taking everything out, we're able to just say, yeah, don't apply that. And then that way, if they decide later, there's not the now we have to go put that back into everything.
Yeah, and so Rick, follow-up question, Rick said, how many view templates do you have in your project? View templates for me, there's, for the most part, a view template for every view type,
Yep,
right? So when I start looking
absolutely.
at view templates, I have different view types up here, right? So if I go to plan view and I go to floor plan, these are all the different view types I'm going to have. Every one of those view types has its own view template. So when somebody creates it, the view template gets assigned automatically. There are some exceptions to the rules, like my details. I only have one detailing one. Scale's just not ticked because I'm going to look at a 3/4 inch detail the same I'm going to look at drafting view. I'm going to look at this 3/4 inch drafting view the same as I'm going to look at an 1.5 inch drafting view the same as a 1/2 inch
Mhm.
drafting view. I'm not physically changing the graphics of anything. It's just the scale. So I'm not doing it based on scale in that scenario. But yes, my plans overall, here's the view template. And then I go into the filters, and this is not the updated version of it, but there's probably minimum 25 to 30 filters in there, right? These might be the only ones getting used, but there's like 20 to 25 filters in there, right? There's filters
Yeah.
that I give every single client. One of those is like the ducts and pipes. Let's get the ducts and
Hmm.
pipes and turn them black, right? Because we all know MEP has color coded for supply air versus return air versus whatever. All of those system classification things, let's turn them black, right? I have another one called levels and grids that's not my company's, turn them off. So I don't have to worry about my consultant putting levels and grids in the right damn work set because they never do, or putting wrong things on the levels and grid work set that I'm not seeing. I don't use work set control. I use filters because they go through links. Those two filters I give to every single one of my clients. Like you at least should have these two filters in every view template, period. End of story. They can be all the way down at the bottom. They don't need to be at the top because these are just, hey, I'm turning these things off or I'm making this black and I just want it there always. But yeah, so it's going to be inside of there. So depending on the client, however many different view types they have, there is a filter or a view template for each one of those view types. The filters then just start deciding on what you're trying to do. And like Melissa said, right, when I start going into my filters, there's a generic model to turn all clearances off, or let me not say off. There's a filter to look for all generic models with clearances in them. There's also specific ones for generic models that have clearances and also a door in it, right? So I can do something different to my door clearances versus my regular clearances. Or I might have one for generic models, depending on the client, for clearances on MEP, mechanical, whatever we want to do. Because again, I might need to go through and start playing with some of that stuff, what's going on and looking. So yeah, there's going to be a lot depending on what you're looking for, right? For me, I do as for my structural engineer clients, as you change the detail component, the thickness of the rebar, I want to change the color. So if it's a number 3 versus a number 4 versus a number 5, I change the color of the rebar in my drafting views. You can turn those off, but as I'm modeling or as I'm detailing, I want to see that. Those also can go through for some of my structural engineers. They do the same thing for 3D models. So this isn't just detail items. This then becomes part of the, hey, if you're modeling rebar, I want to get the model rebar the same colors, right? So it just depends on what you're looking for and how you're doing it. I'd say for most of my clients, the biggest area they do for it are views. Views for A6 views that are for interior elevations, they go through and start creating the most filters for any category is probably going to be based on views. I also have a lot of filters in there for QA, QC. I want to know how many walls have gypsum board on one side, one layer gypsum board. So I go into my QA, QC view, I can turn on this filter and be like, cool, I'm going to highlight all the one layer gypsum board walls red. And I'd be like, why do I have a single layer gypsum board wall floating in the middle of a room? That should have gypsum board on two sides, right? So a lot of it's just QA, QC for me. So that's what a lot of this wall stuff is literally just me doing QA, QC.
Yeah, and your list is adorable, Brian. I'm
My
sure
what?
that your list of both view templates and filters is adorable.
This is
Let's just
my
say in
I'm doing
ours.
I'm
There's a
doing
lot
most
of
of the improvement
scrolling.
in 24. I think this was upgraded from my 23 template. I don't think I've upgraded this from my 24 one.
Okay.
But yes, I know
Yeah,
you
we
guys have
have
hundreds. You guys have
significantly
hundreds of
more view
filters.
types.
Yeah, you guys have hundreds of
And
filters, but you also include MEP in yours too. I only have architecture and structure.
that's fair. Yeah, but yeah, the beauty of most of the filters, once they're set up and you keep them consistent, most people don't have to interact with them at all, ever. Oh, there you go, Beth. I opened my list, Beth, and I was like, yeah, I'm not even going to pretend to try to count right
Yeah,
now.
I'm gonna try to count those. So the other thing that
Not even
since
6
we are
a.m.
talking about view templates and or filters, whatever, I don't know if I've ever actually seen the tabs up here. I've never paid attention, but per Aaron Maller's and Melissa's suggestion, there's a tool I bought. It was like 99 bucks or 90 bucks or 100 bucks or something. And it's called View Filter Manager. And what's great about this is I could find like, cool, I want to come in here and say, I just want to go for view templates. Let me go find a view template for area plans, right? Let me select which area plan I'm looking at over here for area plans. Yeah, this one is so old, it doesn't even have my code plan in here. Whichever. Then I'm inside of here, I can say, cool, I want to grab all of these filters that I'm using, and I want to copy all of these filters over to all of these other view templates, right? I want all of these view templates to have those filters put inside of them. Right, so you can do that. Let's check all of those. Right, and then I can say, cool, grab the filters and the overrides, copy, and I've just pushed all of those over. So
It's
when
the
I,
overrides that are a giant pain in the ass.
huh? Yeah, otherwise you're doing it manually or whatever, blah, blah, blah. How do I have this view filter manager for 25 and 26? I actually emailed the guy directly and he sent me a zip file. Beth, if you send me an email, I can forward it to you. He sent me a zip file with the download. It still looks for your licensing and everything. So it's not like you're pirating the software and then the steps of how to install it. But I just emailed him. He emailed me back like within an hour. Aaron emailed him and never heard back. So I just gave Aaron the same thing. But yeah, so he emailed me, told me this, it's there. Yeah, because the App Store has got so convoluted and Autodesk has been such a pain in the ass. Most people like we're done with the App Store. Yeah, because I was doing
Perfect.
some updates in one of my clients' template in 25, and I'm like, wait, I don't have View Filter Manager. Oh hell no, this is not going to fly.
Yeah,
So,
not even.
so we talked about that for 50 minutes. Hopefully, Rick, that answers your first question, and I was okay with that because he's only got one other question, and the rest of all slack asses. So, what do we have on Rick's other question?
Rick's second question, and the last in the question and answer pod, people, is when modeling piping, we have engineers that are saying they can't really model them accurately because they get too squished on the views and they need to just put them where they put them for the schematics to show well on their plans. But then we end up needing to hide them in plans and elevation. Is this what others are doing?
Well, I think Jason's still on here. Is Pekovic still on here? Yeah, Jason's still on here. So, Jason, I'm going to allow you to talk because this is an MEP
Ooh.
question. Personally, Rick, I think those people are just slack asses, right? Um,
Mm.
they need to adjust their line weights. They need to do something else to be able to do something else inside of here. And the reason why I'm saying that is because they need to model it accurately. I mean, in 100% of all the projects I'm in that are non-residential, it's like, no, you will put this where you think it needs to go, period, because we've got to squeeze so much stuff in there. If you're just putting them 8 inches apart for graphics, then no, that is not going to work because now I don't have enough room for my duct, right? And my cable tray and everything else. So yes, I know they can do this. The question just is why are they not? If it's just for graphics, they need to change their graphics. And then if they really, really, really needed to, with anything in Revit, I'm just going to go to a 3D view. No, I'll go to floor plan. With anything in Revit, if they really, 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 really wanted to, they could come up and say, cool, in this view, I want to go do a display set, right? So in the view, you can go do where the hell are the view to place displacements. Anyone? Anyone? Shoot. You have to grab the object first. I think you have to grab the object first. Where's view displacement? This one. You can grab an object, you can call it display element. So I can say, cool, in this view, I want to take this one wall and move it over to here. That didn't change it in the 3D view. That wall is still in the 3D view right where it needs to be. right? It's still where it needs to be. But in here, I came in and said, no, cool. So your answer to them could be, great, you need to set up a displaced view and move the elements in the displaced view. Save that view so then I can actually show your view in my project. So, and Tom's answering that question as well, saying the pipes can be modeled correctly. They just need to check routing preferences and fittings are being used. Yeah, sounds like a line weight issue to me too.
Yeah, which would be a use of view templates and filters to get a lot of things
Yeah, so
set up nicely.
I do have some just to tag in on that a little bit, Rick. I do have a lot of architects who model in structural columns because they're always like, well, the engineers just don't put them where we want them, and they just take too long to get caught up with us. So they just model all the like 90% of the structure. I see that often with light fixtures and diffusers as well. I've never heard of somebody saying they're actually doing it with the pipes. So that pipes to me is a new one. But no, to me, it's kind of like, no, you need to be modeling what's going on inside of there.
Mhm.
So cool. Hopefully it answered your question.
I know. Jason didn't want to talk. That is weird.
He
Are
probably
you
stepped
okay,
away from his
Jason?
desk.
Do we need to send help? Oh, do you want to just chat? So Jessica did copy her stuff over to
Yeah.
the question and answer. Do we have any recommendations for Revit project translators? We have a group that does international projects, but we do not have a good user who speaks French, so all French projects are a little rough. Even then, most designers design and notate in English, and then a Spanish speaker
So
has to
I'm
manually
sorry, I
translate.
missed the whole conversation because somebody called me on
Ah,
Teams. I turned
Oh,
off my audio.
no worries. We're beyond that. You're a slacker.
What was I getting asked?
No, the
we called
question
you up
was
when you
for
were.
MEP, the pipe consultants were like, hey, we can't model our pipes accurately because they're too close together in plan and we can't graphically see them in plan.
No,
It wasn't
I mean,
pretty.
I think we use a rule of thumb of like 9 to 12 inches apart in the model just to see everything and that tags don't overlap. But as far as exact location, you're not going to do that until you make it hand over to the contractor, and either the subs or something are going to do that kind of work where it's actually going to be installed.
Yes.
Diagrammatic
Okay.
design intent.
Yeah, but if you model too far apart, then I can get my cable tray and my everything else in that corridor.
I mean, but when you put your pipe in there and your tag, 3/32, it's like 8 or 9 inches before it starts overlapping each other, like the tags are on top of each other.
So I
So
think
you
that,
either have to offset your tags so that, one's here and another one's just down the pipe a little bit so they don't start touching each other.
well, yeah, that sounds like what architects have to do for every damn wall, door, every tag possible.
You have to actually look at
So
it.
it's just been consensus
Mhm.
that we
Yeah,
do it, about 9 inches apart.
cool. All righty. So we'll go back to Jessica's question. So Jessica, I've had one client do a lot of things like that. I've never heard of anything for translating, the verbiage inside of Revit. One of my clients stopped using um, text, and what they started doing was a keynote. So they started keynoting
Mhm.
everything, right? So they would design, and they wouldn't do text on anything. They would do keynotes, and everything had a keynote. And I'm not saying it was like CSI keynote numbers. It might have been, 1,000 through 5,000, whatever, but they keynoted everything. And the cool part was then they could take that TXT file that had the keynotes in it, give it to somebody to translate, and then just point Revit to the other TXT file. And all of a sudden they went from everything being Spanish to everything being French or whatever, English, whatever they needed to be. So they literally were setting this up to be, we keynote everything. And like I said, they didn't show the keynote numbers. They were just showing keynote text
Mhm.
values, but each element then had its own number to it. Or even if they were user-defined text values, it's fine, because then somebody could go in, take that same TXT file, translate it, and then they could go through and say, cool, this makes sense, point Revit to the other thing. The only time that didn't work for them is when people were adding text to dimensions. So if they wanted to add, AFF for above finished floor or whatever, things like that, it didn't go through. So that was kind of I don't remember what they did for that. I think they basically just said, no, screw that. You're going to put a keynote next to it or something like that. I don't remember. But yeah, so if you're just talking this, they eliminated all text from their drawings, period. So that way it was just, oh, we have families, we can, like the title block, we could swap out the title block, which is all in Spanish. And then they did also for things like project names, whatever, if it did manage, it did change. They did have a lot of that stuff, just not under project parameters, excuse me, under the project information. So then in that project information, they could change it from English to Spanish to French or whatever there too. So their title blocks had a lot of project information parameters inside of there to be able to change that out. So that's all I've heard of. I've not heard of anything like saying, cool, let's go translate this, because we all know, even Google Translate does not do a great job, let alone when you're talking industry specific terminology.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a bunch of projects in Brazil, and so we did keynotes, and so we would send our lists down, and yeah, they would swap it over to Portuguese for us.
Yeah, an Autodesk AI tool to do it. Somebody might have something out there that would go in and do it. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I could suggest. Again, even if you're not necessarily using keynotes, you might be tagging the properties of something with like a description or something like that. And if that's the case there too, create some schedules, export those schedules out to Excel, then you could translate in Excel, use one of the add-in utilities to bring that back in, and it could change the description, it could change the type comments, whatever you might be using, and you could do it that way as well. So rather than having somebody just go through and try to translate all of this on the screen, you could try to go through and do it, externally exporting to Excel as well. But yeah, you're not going to find anything that would do it via text. And in Revit, since we can't schedule text and export it and rechange it, there you go. So I don't know. That's all I have. I've only had one or two experiences with it. Like I said, the one experience I suggested keynoting, the one client loved it. The other one, I don't know if I ever heard back from them when they talked. I just only recall the one.
Well, I think we tried to get people away from using text notes unless it's a very, very one-off thing just in general, because then you end up with the rogue language where they're saying something different than in every other view ever.
Yeah, you don't work with structural engineers that often, because structural engineers hate not using text, because they don't want to call this out as a 3-inch stud. They want to call it out with so much verbiage that, yeah, they just want to be able to do that.
But why would they? I mean, if they're going to call it out, they're going to call it out in multiple places. So why is that not just part of their keynote?
Yeah, I don't know. Structural engineers want the freedom. I have not convinced a structural engineer
to want the freedom to screw their shit up.
Tagging either via keynoting or tagging via the element. I have not seen a structural engineer ever say okay to that. And I've worked with a lot of structural engineers. The Revit users are like, cool, let's do that. The engineer's like, no.
They will fight for their right to be very inconsistent.
Yes. I'm like, but I remember for me, when the last architect I worked from, the last architectural firm I worked for, I gave them my 2 weeks notice, and I got to go through and start cleaning up like doors and window schedules, and they changed one word from like building wrap to whatever sheathing, whatever waterproofing membrane. And I spent literally 2 weeks just changing text values in AutoCAD. And then that's when I saw it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm done with AutoCAD forever. And that's when I came up with the intelligent detailing and everything else. It's like, oh no, change that.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the stuff people will do to make sure that they have their freedom to do stuff is ridiculous. Like, okay, or that could have taken you 2 minutes to go change the keynote file, and ta-da.
Well, back then I was AutoCAD. I had not seen Revit yet. When I left that firm and when I saw Revit, I'm like, I am so done.
But you're structural engineers that are using text and not a keynote or a tag.
Yeah. Well, that's why I laugh my intelligent detailing. I have people who still see it and they're like, oh, this is great. Well, how long have you been doing this? Like, well, I was introduced to Revit in 2004, and I was kind of doing it in AutoCAD with blocks back then. But yeah, I've been doing this for 21 years in Revit.
Decades.
Decades. So yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour.
Decades.
There are no more questions. I appreciate everybody for showing up, especially for those new people I see on here. It's always good to see new names. And of course, we always appreciate all the old people, the not old people, I'm the old person in the room, all the usuals who like to come to here. So glad everybody came. Tell your friends, families, enemies, anybody you want to know who wants to kill an hour of billable time, let them know about Revit Radio. We will be having obviously another session before AU, but AU is going to be shortly after. So if I don't see you in the next session, make sure to come up and say hi if you go to AU or anybody else you know. You know, most of the people who do this for a do this for a living like people to say hi to them. We're all just people. We like human interaction and contact. So if you're going, great. Otherwise, we'll see you next month and come up with some good questions. Thanks, everyone.